Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Dance Teacher Diaries podcast. I am your host, Sarah Jean Watts, teacher, choreographer, consultant, and founder of the Movement Mentor. We do choreography, train dancers, work with teachers and studios, build curriculums, custom costumes, dance photography, and I wanted to quickly mention, before I forget, that we are now taking reservations for choreography for the 2023-24 season. So even if you don't have your plans ironed out yet, head to the choreography page on our website, themovementmentor.com, and get on the list because we can only take so many before our calendar is full. This past year, we did the highest number of routines we have since was founded. So thank you very much for everyone who trusted us with your choreography this past year, and I'm already expecting to pass that over the summer. So that is awesome. Again, themovementmentor.com. Back to the business at hand and the title of this episode, This Isn't Fair, and other stuff we say when we don't win. So we are going to be talking about reacting to dance competition results, feelings connected to placing below where we expected, and how we can help dancers keep a healthy inner dialogue when they come off stage. This is going to be a little bit of a tough one to tackle, so listen with caution. As always, I'm going to mention the cover art. It's myself. Why is it? I have so many beautiful, gorgeous pictures of dancers, and why is it myself again? Well, one, I guess I can say because I'm the host, but the main reason is because I kept trying pictures on the cover art for this, and I just didn't feel like any one of the dancers was going to love being the person next to the title that says, "This isn't fair." It didn't feel right to put anybody there, and just never looked quite right. So I was like, that's all right. I'll put my face on it. So in terms of credit for this week's episode, I'm just going to give it to my sister who took the photograph that you see of myself. But in general, you can always find credit to the dancer and image creator and any other info I know in the caption of my social media post. So be sure to check there. Quick disclaimer, this podcast talks in terms of real life situations. I don't ever intend to be overly harsh or critical, but we aren't going to avoid talking about issues and shortcomings. Please don't take offense if you hear something that you disagree with or hits close to home. Just disregard and move on, or take it as an opportunity to reflect on an area or thought that could use some reevaluation. Everything we discuss here is meant to be constructive, but honest. Okay, here we go. Reacting to unwanted results. I have unwanted in air quotes. And this is kind of opposed to reacting to when we win, because I think that's kind of a separate issue about etiquette and, how we can kind of deal with that. But this is about when things don't go the way that we wanted. And the first point I have on here is to remember that judging is subjective. It is a numerical assessment by some people of a moment in time on a certain day. Yes, it's a panel of judges, but some people at this particular moment on this particular day based on what you put in front of them on stage, okay? The opinion, however accurate or valid, of a judging panel at any given competition is not the be-all, end-all of what kind of dancer you are. So I think we should value judges' opinions. It's an educated, qualified opinion, hopefully for the most part, about what you've asked them to literally judge and critique. So we should put some weight to it, but not so much that we put all of our, all of the way that we value ourselves as a dancer on that. So if we don't have a score that we like any one day, or we have critiques that we don't like, let's not let that diminish everything about who we are. And to be honest, some people aren't even at their best when they're competing. They get stage fright, they get nervous, and they do better in different settings. Some people thrive in the face of competition. Some people have stuff going on that just compiles in a certain way, and then the day crumbles around them and they didn't put their best work out on stage. So it isn't the end all be all. If you always win, that doesn't mean that there is no one that it will ever come close to you and you're untouchable. And if you always lose, that doesn't mean that you suck. It's just an opinion on a day. And if you have not listened to episode 2, Competition Scoring 101, do that, because even if you know all the basics about studio competition scoring, there is still some key info in there, especially toward the end, about the reality of scoring. Let's move on. Kind of mentioned this a little bit already, but points are based on what judges saw in that moment. So let me break this down. Like I kind of already said, you put something on stage in front of them and they have to give it a certain number of points based on what they see there. So I'm going to hit some subtopics on this. And these are things that I have told dancers many times over the years, so I will share with you. You don't earn points for trying really hard. That's just the way it is. I mean, do I need to explain it? I know that you may have worked really hard. I know that you may have really tried really hard. And no one's saying that you did it. But that's not the basis on which you're earning points because you really tried. It's whether or not you executed based on the judging criteria. And I think that one is also hard sometimes for parents. And this kind of spills over into like audition results sometimes. But I guess that's a little bit different. But just keep that in mind. You could try as much as your heart could possibly pump out. That's not what the competition is based on, though, right? We can't judge on that. You also don't earn points for wanting it really bad. You can want it from the depths of your soul, but the judges cannot sit there and go to the category of, did she really try? Yeah, 20 points. Did she really want it in her heart and soul? I think so. Yeah, 20 points on that. Or looking at her and going, yeah, I don't think that she wanted this today. And I mean, that's not a judging criteria, right? So that for dancers, keep that in mind. Like I said, you could try really hard. You can want it really bad. And that may help give you that little boost that edges up your performance that week or keeps you going the long term. But know that those are good qualities in a dancer that just don't add up to points on stage alone. Those qualities might make you work harder outside of the competition to get better performance on stage. But just because you really, really wanted to win that day doesn't mean that it matters to a judge, right? They don't know that about you, okay? You also don't earn points for overcoming a tough week and putting yourself out there. Similar situation. Like I said, it's been a hard week. You've got a lot going on. Your other routines didn't go well. You had a solo or a group dance, and that just didn't pan out the way you wanted. There's been stressors. You're coming back from an illness. We could come up with a ginormous laundry list of reasons. And again, those are qualities. And like I said before, don't let a judge's score make you think that's the be-all, end-all of your dancing. These other things that we're talking about, overcoming a tough week, getting out on stage, putting something out there anyway, those are qualities of a good dancer. Those are good life skills. But that doesn't factor into the score based on what actually happened out there. So don't hang on it, dwell on it, beat yourself up over it. The final score you get is about what was actually executed in that 1.5 to 3 minutes on stage. The judges are not aware of or expected to factor in anything else. Know that maybe even if you did mess something up, that you usually don't. That's the nature of competing. You might be on top of your game in every single moment one day, you or your team, and then the next some fluke happens, it never goes wrong. That's how it all shakes out. That's the whole point here, right? You can be a team at the Super Bowl and have an undefeated season and then lose in the clutch moment because things just didn't play out the way you wanted. But you still were the team that got to the Super Bowl that had an undefeated season prior to that. That's what competition is about. I, being an avid Packer fan, I'm not trying to low-key call them out on some previous seasons, but actually I am. Okay. So anyways, know that even if you mess something up that you usually don't, that's competing. Sometimes it all comes together in the moment. Sometimes it doesn't. All right? So let's move on to what dancers can think about and focus on. If you're a dancer listening to this, everything I've said so far is a thing that you can think about and focus on. Not putting so much weight on any one performance, on any one score, on any one evaluation, not using that to gauge your worth or overall ability as a dancer, knowing that things happen and there will be highs and there will be lows, okay? All of those things. Plus, you can't change the past. And that's one of those things that's easier said than done or easier said than felt. or just go, well, the past is the past and move on. You still have feelings about it. You still have regrets. You're still frustrated at yourself or somebody else. You're like, oh, well, we always use Susie as the general kid's name, even though that's like pretty much nobody's kid's name, but it's common in like dance teachers and stuff or to go Susie as a representative name. Like Susie totally botched this one part, or she fell down right on her butt in the turn sequence and she cost us the whole competition, or whatever you're frustrated about. No amount of worry or stress right now is going to do anything about what happened then. So the best that you can, take it for what it was. Know that it happened in the moment, like we've discussed. That's the nature of competing, and then you need to move on, especially if you have more routines, because we can't let this snowball downhill. I got ahead of myself. Recognize the issues or mistakes without attacking yourself or others for them. Whatever comes out of your mouth comes right back to your own ears. This is a good one. And it is easy to totally forget this and pull yourself down with all kinds of sentences. I do this plenty. You have things, somebody asks you how you did, or, you're talking back and forth, and you just have this huge list of negative things about yourself. Let's take first. That you did wrong, that you messed up, that you feel bad about, that you believe sabotaged and ruined the whole dance, or whatever it is. And it's good to have that critical analysis, and I'll talk about that more later. But every one of these negative things that comes out of your own mouth, that sound is literally cycling right back into your own ears. It's almost as if somebody else was telling it to you. And it is hard on you personally, right, to sit and listen to someone give you 15 extremely negative critiques, bashing the tiniest little things that you did. And so sometimes we're more allowing of ourselves to do that. Well, as long as I say it about myself, but you're the one still hearing that. Is that too like metaverse? No, can't be, right? What you say, you hear. Speak kindly about yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to not recognize any faults. Just be aware of when you may be putting too much pressure on yourself or being too hard on yourself. Okay. Everybody's their own worst critic. Most of the time. I know some people that I don't think are like that. I know they say everybody, but I definitely am for sure. And I find that is very common among dancers, to definitely be your own worst critic. Okay. Critical assessment is a good skill to have. It is. You need to be able to have some type of reality check about your own performance or about your team's performance. We cannot live in a fantasy world where no mistakes are made and everything is perfect. We as dancers, for ourselves, for our teammates, as teachers, as parents, every performance is not going to be the best one. And this one, I think there's more to say about this. So I'm going to be careful not to go off on like some super long, crazy tangent. So just know that I'm not explaining the full picture of things. But we want parents to be supportive, right? Like the parents in the audience, we want you to be your dancer's cheerleader and to be their support system, because as teachers and coaches, we can't always be we can't never deliver the bad news. We can't never give critique. We can't never point out issues and flaws. That's part of our job in terms of getting things to a better place. So it's not necessary for the parents to be the number one critiquer of the dance. That's kind of part of the teacher's job. And so the teachers have a support relationship with their student as well. But the biggest support role should hopefully come from the parents and the family. Now, that being said, sometimes a dancer can come off stage and not be happy with something about the performance that just happened, either from themselves or their team. And they get frustrated with parents who immediately tell them like, that was amazing, that you looked perfect. I don't even know. I can't even give good examples of things that parents say right now off the top of my head. But, it's meant with the best of intention, because you're trying to pump them up, make them feel good, help them not dwell on the negative. But they only seem to get irritated with you, right? Because they feel like you're just pumping them full of fluff, and they right now have all these emotions about how it wasn't great. So knowing that, know that like I think it's okay to let a dancer even immediately recognize that there was some issues. They know there were, most likely. If they don't, then certainly don't bring them up when they first walk off stage. They'll be like, well, I mean, that wasn't very good. But if you could tell that they're feeling that some type of disappointment or frustration, it is okay to acknowledge or recognize things that they're saying went wrong. Because that's a critical assessment tool. They need to be able to recognize that. We just also, if they don't happen to do this themselves, throw out some things that went really well or some moments that you really liked so that they can find, in that very emotional place, they can find a balance as soon as possible and go, okay, yes, fair, true, that didn't work out exactly ideally or how you would have wanted, but this did. So help point out that balance for them when they're not really looking for it. But critical assessment is a good skill to have. Dancers need to be able to know when things do not look or feel right or don't go well, because then how else would they improve that? It is worse to have no idea what any issues are, to be completely oblivious, like I said, living in a fantasy world and just have no idea if you made any mistakes or what went wrong or what could possibly have gone better. We have to be present in our performance so that we can improve it. It's a lot of P's. Be present in your performance so that it can be improved. All right. Like I said, you can't change what you don't know is wrong. And find the good. There is always something that went well. So for people trying to help dancers, for dancers out there listening, you should know what your issues are. You can't change things if you don't know you're wrong. But always take a moment, take a deep breath, and find the good. There is always good. I have never, and I've been doing this my whole life, I have never seen a performance where I couldn't find anything that went well or looked good. Never. So there's always something. Sometimes you got to dig for a little bit like gold, but it's out. It's in there. All right. What else can dancers think about and focus on? If you are disappointed, now I wouldn't do this within 2 minutes of walking off stage, but let's say we've had a little bit of time. You're not that happy with something about it. Think about what you can change or what needs to change in your day-to-day to improve your results on stage. Because it is the micro habits. It's the things that we do consistently. It is the way that we show up every day in class. It is the way that we rehearse. The way that you dance in class is the way that you dance. I've said that many a time, and I'll continue to say it in regards to lots of different things, but certainly this. The way that you show up every week in class and the way that you run that dance, that's how you dance. Don't be like, well, it's different when no, it's not. You might have a smidge more adrenaline going, but the way you do it most often is the way you do it. So what needs to change? Do you need to focus on a daily basis on a little bit more strength training? Do you need more fundamentals because you felt off balance a lot? Do you need to perform more in class and in rehearsal? That's a tough one to pull because people they feel silly, or should I say stupid, performing in class, like full on with their face, with their energy. And yes, in rehearsal, but I also just mean like straight up in class. If we're doing a jazz combo in class, if we're going across the floor, perform it, dance it. Don't just go through the mechanics, dance it. That makes you a better dancer. But anyways, practicing performance, because that's not something that you're particularly strong at if you didn't like how that went. Usually transition, so going into a skill or coming out of it are where a lot of mistakes are made, and dancers will beat themselves up over those. So then, go back to the mechanics, the fundamentals. Am I training transitions, or am I spending all my time practicing tricks? Because it's one thing to have the trick, but if you can't get in and out of it, well, then that's not enough. I would say it's almost inevitable that a judge is going to comment on work your transitions, clarify how you got in and out of something. You know the drill. Okay. Another thing I have here. This is an important one, only in the most nose-to-nose situations does an individual make or break the routine. Now this, I can't even count the number of times, I say that all the time, but it's true, that dancers have come off stage and felt so bad about something they did in a group routine and feel like if our dance doesn't win, it's because I did that. And you could just see they are defeated, like emotionally defeated. They look physically defeated. Unless it's like, I imagine this is like an Olympic finish, like a photo finish, right? And we got like two sprinters and somebody just juts their neck out and that makes their nose cross the finish line first. You got to be about that close for one person's thing to make or break it. The more likely scenario is that there was a collection of things that have kind of kept you apart from whoever might have scored above. Whether it be some of those things I already said, they just straight up had a more difficult routine. It was cleaner. There was more like emotional content. They had more connection with the audience. They kept their formations cleaner. Their transitions were smoother. They had, some better quality technique in some places. Movement quality. There's so many reasons. So rarely is it one person's one mistake one time that just ruins it for everybody. I see that comment come out a lot from dancers and also sometimes parents and teachers who kind of focus in on one particular mistake and then attribute the loss to that, which I think is most likely, more times than not, inaccurate and also not very fair. Okay, what else do we have? This one's a heavy hitter. This is really important. So the last thing I have under dancers, things that dancers can think about and try to remember when they're not happy with their results is that the most important people in your life are proud of you because they watched you struggle and overcome to get where you are, not because of how big the result is. That's one of the things that we mean when we say it's about the journey and not the destination, which has become a little bit cliche, but it's still very valid. The people that really make an impact on your life, not the random person sitting in the audience that you don't know, not the girl that you think gave you a snicker from the other team that watched you on the side of the stage. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Who cares? We're not worried about her or the people in the audience. The most important people in your life have been there and watched you grow, develop, change, go from one place to another. They know about your challenges. They know about how you're working through them. They know about your small wins that maybe the judges have no idea about. And those things add up to a whole picture that are more important than how big the win is, what the final result is on any given day. And I think everybody would agree with that. Okay, next up. It's just literally, the bullet point is literally titled, "But it's not fair." Okay. All right. The first thing I have to just break it to you. Life's not fair is an okay phrase. Like, I know it's overused. I know we don't like hearing that, but it's an okay phrase. It's accurate. We must learn when there is nothing to be done about it and when something must be done about it. Key distinctions. Life as a whole is generally not fair. Sometimes there's nothing to be done about it. You must accept it. Sometimes something must be done about it because the injustice is too great. Okay. Let me tell you, 9.5 times out of 10 in the context of what we're talking about, nothing is to be done about it. As grave as you think the injustice has been at this dance competition in any random state in the Midwest on any given weekend, there's nothing to be done. Okay, sometimes it plays in our favor and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm just gonna throw this out there. Sorry to throw, it seems like I'm throwing shade to anybody, but when the discrepancy, when the misdeduction, when whatever it is in our favor, then we're happy to ride it out, right? For the most part, they didn't notice. I guess we lucked out on that one. And when it's not in our favor, we can't be coming down the aisles with pitchforks. There are people that I'm sure they've come forward and been like, we really should have lost points for this. We should have been deducted for this or, disqualified for this. But how often are we really doing that? So just maybe kind of also just be aware of that. When we're calling it luck, when things work out in our favor that would be unfair to somebody else, but then being mad about things being unfair when it doesn't work out in our favor. It is what it is. Now, if there is a real issue of like genuine, serious concern, take a fact-based, if I could talk in bold, fact-based concern to and now I have an army term here, a military term, to your chain of command. So I'll explain what that means if you don't know, and that's not just a military term, right? Does that get used in other areas of life in corporate world? I don't really know. But if there's a real issue, calm down. Don't give an emotional delivery. Do a smidge bit of research and clarification to make sure that the facts are correct as you see them. And then take it through your chain of command, which is most likely through like your teacher, coach, director, and then, through the competition staff in that way. Try not to cut that because it's in place for a reason, one. There's the expression of solving things at the lowest level. So there may be a missing piece of information that you could get between where you are and literally pulling the fire alarms at the competition that would clarify, that would clear this up. Let the people that are supposed to handle these things handle them. You're going to have to just trust at the end of the day that they're going to use their discretion to handle it at the severity that they think it needs to be. And if it doesn't line up with yours, that's what you're asking them to do, right? Is to coach, is to teach, is to direct, is to handle. And if you feel like that job is not being done correctly, then challenge them to a duel in the parking lot. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't fight anybody in the parking lot. Set up a professional meeting outside the competition to talk about what you think you need from the staff so that the kids get a more fair shake at the competition or better representation or whatever you want to call it. All right, next point about things just not being fair. I got a newsflash for you. Judges are human, not infallible gods. So they do make mistakes. They're people. There's a lot of checks and balances in place to reduce that as much as possible so that it does stay as fair as possible. But something might slip through. They're not perfect. And again, I go back to my competition scoring podcast episode. I think that was number 2 because we're only on 4 and I'm already forgetting the order of the previous. I scratched the mic. Already forgetting the order of the previous episodes. But that one I kind of mentioned a little bit too about scoring and about, different internal scales that judges have and about scoring things, at what order in the day or, 3 hours into solos, are you scoring the same as you did at the beginning? Things like that. There's just human factors involved. Just like there's human factors involved on stage, there is in the judging panel. But now, in the same breath, in that same thought, when you say something's not fair, fair according to whose standards, from whose perspective? Possibly yours or by your personal standards, but that doesn't mean that everybody is subscribing to those same standards or everybody shares your same perspective. So you may feel like it's not fair, but somebody else may feel like it's plenty fair. And that's another reason to kind of go through, like if you're a dancer and you don't, you feel like something is unfair, go to your parent or go to your teacher. Hopefully you have a trusting relationship with your teacher where you can bring those kinds of things to them. And then let that go higher if it will, or end there if it won't, because it may feel unfair to you from where you're analyzing it. Well, someone else may feel quite differently. Remember that in the absence of, let me slow down the way I talk. In the absence of information, people fill in what they don't know from their own point of view. Oh, isn't that like a daily in life? Whatever, if we know it's a 10-piece puzzle and we have 8 pieces, we're just going to fill in the last 2 the best that we can. Sometimes we have 8 pieces of the puzzle and we think, for whatever reason, that it's an 8-piece puzzle, but it's really a 10. And so then you're like, oh, I've got the whole picture. I definitely know. Well, perhaps you don't. Okay. So just be aware if you're kind of doing that and compiling information to fill in gaps. And now you're kind of swaying the story or the situation a little bit. The last one I have for this, when we're talking about just judges being human, is that you may not value the exact same qualities in a dance that the panel did. If you don't like your result, if you don't think that it's fair, because why? Because my dance was way harder than hers. I don't know, based on, again, whose standards? Perhaps you're valuing long turn sequences a little bit more. And so you're going, well, I had these 2 very long, detailed turn sequences, and this girl beat me, and she only had like 1 triple in her whole dance. This is just a off the top of my head example. I think turns is an easy one to throw out there, but whatever. You're assuming that the highest value is placed on the turn sequences because you placed the highest value on those. But that doesn't mean that the judging panel did. They might have liked that the other routine didn't have as many turns because they used more fluidity. They had different kinds of transitions. Like overall, the picture they presented in terms of movement quality, technique, transitional ability, emoting, staging, whatever it is, that was more valuable to them than your a la seconds. I know, sometimes that's a tough one, but just because, again, I'll say it one more time and then move on. Just because you very highly value something doesn't mean that the judging panel agrees that that is of the highest value. Another thing we can do when things are just not fair is ask yourself why specifically you don't think it was fair. Be very specific, try to be articulate as possible with that feeling. Because a lot of times it's something that comes out of us as just an emotional response in the moment. We are unhappy with the way things went, so our gut reaction is that it's not fair. Feel your feelings, have your emotions. That's valid. I mean, as long as you don't attack anybody else with them. But then, when you can, calm down a little bit and then go, okay, specifically, why was it not fair? And then we go backwards in our little checklist here and we go, okay, if it really was fair for a very legitimate and serious reason that we can expect anybody to do anything about, I'll take that forward. If I'm just mainly saying it wasn't fair because I don't like the results, I value different things, I didn't have my best day, I'm just internally frustrated and disappointed, then just swallow that. Take some time to yourself. Deal. And that's another thing to quick touch back. I didn't really mention it much, but because usually it's for someone, like I said, in that chain of command to handle. But there are sometimes things, before when I said life's not fair, know when, there's nothing to be done about it and something must be done about it. Sometimes things are just not fair and there's no reasonable action we can expect to happen because it isn't confirmed. It wasn't seen. There's a difference of opinion that, that's not the way that we do the rules. So usually someone along in that filtration, is that filtration? Is that a word? Filtering? Somewhere in that, someone along that filtering process then has to think critically and go, can we expect, even if it was unfair, can we expect some type of change in this situation? Probably not. So we're not going to spend more energy stressing over it. But that's going backwards. All right. Last one about thinking things were fair. Avoid the Othello effect. I don't think that's the name of a real thing. Like the Othello effect. That's hard to say. I just put it down here because that game Othello. Do you remember? This is a very old game, but it's a board, almost like a checkerboard. It is a checkerboard. And then it is a checkerboard. And then there are all the little pieces and they're white and one side and black on the other. And two people play and they're opposite colors. And then when you put your piece next to, like if I have black pieces and I put them next to the white pieces, then everything like connected to that square flips colors. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? So basically like, the Othello effect, groups of people changing each other's minds, that you didn't have an opinion, but now you're in the proximity of others being very vocal and emotional and strong in their opinions, and now yours is changing. Or even if, it's starting to color yours or sway yours. And that's okay. What they're saying might be truthful, but just be aware of it and try not to get caught up in it. This is like an example I can just imagine in my head right now, like this group of dancers who have come off and they're backstage, and then one person is talking about something, and pretty soon, within minutes, we have like a group of 16 people that all have the same opinion on a particular situation, 50% of which weren't even in that dance or weren't even around the stage, and now everybody's going, that other studio? Let me tell you all the things that they're doing that are unfair. Like that, they don't play fair. They don't compete fair. They're not right. Like... I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You only have that opinion because this girl next to you had that opinion because she heard it from this girl over here. Okay. And that happens with dancers. It happens with parents. It happens with teachers. It happens with humans. So just know it. All right. Another thing, when things just are not fair is, let's say the reality is right? This is an honest podcast. Let's say the reality is that you just, right now, you're not dancing at the level that means that you should place higher than you placed. And that's okay. You can improve to get there if you want to, or maybe you're against really tough competition this time. Girls who train a lot of hours and you just don't train that many hours. You have other hobbies. Like, it's okay. But, it's kind of funny. I'm about to use this phrase right now when we're talking about things not being fair, but sometimes you're just beat fair and square because somebody outdanced you. Maybe just on this particular day and you've beat them in the past, and that is contributing to you feeling like this isn't fair. Because you're like, well, 2 competitions ago, I totally scored above her. Re-listen to this podcast, start back over, you need a refresh. Or just, hey, not everybody is at the same level for lots of reasons. And sometimes you're just not at the top of the pool. That's competing, that's life. And it's fair in that they deserved the spot that they earned. And right now you're just not dancing at that level. So either be content enjoying the process of where you are right now in your dance journey and let it be where it is, or like I said before, start thinking about what changes you need to make in your dance training or your approach to get closer to the top of the bracket. And I have been speaking just now in terms of solos, one-on-one, but this certainly applies to groups and teams. You can just not be the team that showed up at the top of the list that day, or just in general. There are some other studios or teams that consistently outperform and they're earning those top spots. Or maybe you certainly have the potential to place that high, but give yourself a reality check. You can want what you don't work for. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. Now, if you feel like you really put it all out there and you have been working, then default back and just go, you can want it really bad. You can try really hard and it just still doesn't work out. Most importantly about this whole category and topics is that this competition score sheet will not define your life. Don't give it that much power. And this is a life lesson brought to you by dance. Don't let any one score sheet, one moment, one thing in time, one action define who you are and give it enough power to control your life or dictate your well-being. That's hard. It's hard to overcome things like that. I'm definitely not saying it's easy. I get caught in quicksand just as easily as anybody else. A good thing to remind yourself is don't let a competition score sheet have that much power over you. The last thing we're going to talk about here on this topic today is additional thoughts for parents and teachers. So helping dancers cope with these kinds of emotions, reacting in these situations. And the first thing I have here, you don't have to justify why you got anything other than first place. You don't have to explain it away. You don't have to list all the conditions and reasons why, you weren't at the top or, so-and-so was there. Or do what you want to do. But I don't think it's necessary to explain why you didn't get first and just like searching for justification. Like you just didn't for all kinds of reasons. It's a competition. Why do I feel kind of strongly enough about this to even write it down? One, I think you should let the dancing speak for itself. And I know that people who don't know won't get it. And they're like, well, they haven't seen us. So they won't understand why we got fifth and not first. And they'll think only first is good. I know, that sucks. But good dancing is good dancing. And whether you were first place on any given one day or 10th place, let the dancing speak for itself. And you don't need to say more about it, one. And two, sometimes I feel like the need to justify not getting first or explain away not getting first shows dancers by example, even inadvertently, that was the most important thing. That we do have to give a reason why. But there are so many other instances in life not related to dance that we would tell our kids the same information, right? You don't have to explain every little bit of yourself to everyone. You don't have to justify why you have a feeling or you make the choice that you make. Now, that's with the obvious caveats, right? I mean, we are living in a society. We have to be functional out in the world. But you know what I mean. There is a difference between looking at another group, possibly that scored above you, making an intelligent analysis, drawing some comparisons, looking at the differences, deciding if there are some qualities in a team or a dancer that scored better that you want to emulate or adjust to be more like, or maybe not because you have a different type of program with different goals, different dancers, whatever. There's a difference between that and then kind of accidentally being self-deprecating in a way where it's like, I wouldn't have, opened the front door to my house and have somebody come in and immediately go, yeah, I know I don't have the biggest house or the fanciest house, but with the housing market the way it is, and then just the houses in this neighborhood are really expensive and my job doesn't really pay the salary that I would like it to. So I really can't afford things like that. Well, actually, I have this friend, and the only reason she can afford the house that she's in is because she got it in the divorce. But she likes to act on social media like she didn't, which really just makes me look like I should be doing better. But it's fine because I'm totally cool with it. Yeah, it's totally cool. Like, why would you lead with that? Just welcome the people into your home. So I know it's kind of like an odd example. I'm just trying to very quickly think of real life situations where we don't need to explain away why we don't think we're the best of the best at every turn. As if meeting the criteria for best of the best in somebody else's eyes is something we constantly have to be able to explain away or justify in ourselves, and we don't. Maybe that made no sense to you and you're like, Sarah, that is a completely separate thing and you should have never said that. I don't know. Whatever. Okay. Another recommendation I have for you is to share real life moments with them, positive and negative. Like if I give off this persona that I'm a superhero that never gets down, then I think it makes my dancers feel like they're inadequate for being human, but I'm human. So I don't keep from sharing those things. Now, I don't share every little detail in my personal life or much about my personal life. I don't air my dirty laundry or anybody else's for that matter. There are boundaries, as there would be in any circumstance. So you can't say everything, but just letting them see you as a human who also makes mistakes, who doesn't always make the right choice, who does things wrong sometimes, and letting that just be commonplace or laugh it off or a quick little chat about how you're moving forward with that or dealing. So that they see coping strategies and humanity right in front of them on a daily basis. They don't have to be perfect all the time. And I can use my fantastic ability to be imperfect as a way to show that. And to say even a little bit more about that, competition isn't just an opportunity to win and be recognized and feel great. It's also an opportunity to develop the very crucial life skill of coping with disappointment and failure. And I think there are a lot of dance studios nowadays that, are non-compete studios. They literally don't even engage in competition or things like that, which I think is valid and has its place. But like I said before in previous podcasts, winning feels good. Of course it does. That's part of the high of competing is when you do it and you come out on top, right? But if that's the only thing we're doing it for is the opportunity to be recognized and always feel great all the time, then we really run the risk of putting ourselves in a vulnerable position to be very disappointed or to be very ego-driven and constantly looking for gratification, satisfaction, validation. That's the word I was actually looking for. And that's kind of, I think, how we ended up in this place where the titles are platinum, double platinum, triple platinum, first this, first that, fourth that, a prize for everything. Everybody gets a medal. And I don't want to critique that too much and be like, competitions absolutely shouldn't do that. Nobody should get a medal unless you're first, second, or third. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want to get into that right now. Just that this concept that when you go to a competition, you got to get something. You got to win something. You have to feel validated in some way. Doesn't translate to real life because we know as adults, if you're an adult listening to this or even like a young adult, there are so many times in life where you get nothing. I mean, right? Sometimes you can do your best and just not get it. Sometimes you can do everything right and just not win. That's just the way it is. And I think that's another very important part about competition. We don't just focus on the winning. We also focus on the experience. We also focus on this semi-controlled, basically, or pretty controlled in terms of life situations. This controlled opportunity to learn about how to cope with disappointment. And not just disappointment because you didn't get what you wanted, but failure because sometimes we fail. that's real too. Like, you can really mess up, right? You can fail to practice adequately. You can fail to execute. You can just literally go out there and be like, okay, I just didn't do my best that day, and shucks darn, I didn't come out on top. You can walk off stage and go, I forgot half of it. I fell out of everything. I botched it. You can know that you kind of failed that one. And that's okay too. Fail is not a dirty word. So share these real life moments. Let dancers see that you're human too, that you have to deal with your own disappointments, your own failures. You have to develop coping strategies for those so that they develop coping strategies for theirs, and healthy ones. And let competition be that. Just as much as it's there to give you an opportunity to shine and feel amazing and win, it's also there to give you a safety net-like experience of how you're going to deal with that for the rest of your life. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to fail. It's okay to lose. It's okay to feel bad about it. That's part of it. What else you can do is also just help them walk through everything I said before I got to this advice for parents and teachers section, which I'm sure you were listening to all the way because you got to this part. And like I kind of said before, not just on competition day, help them do these kinds of things in regards to conversations about competitions, theirs or somebody else's, during class time as part of their normal thought patterns. This isn't just a mask we put on competition day. This is who we are. This is how we think. And, when they have a bad rehearsal or practice, I encounter this situation all the time where I have the opportunity during a particular practice or rehearsal that is not going well, or, parts are going well and parts aren't, to demonstrate a certain thought pattern and a certain reaction and a certain mentality that I am basically training into them for when we come to a higher stakes situation. Just like we don't only dance on stage at competition, we train through class. Same thing here. Train that kind of healthy approach in the smaller moments. A couple more. Avoid perpetuating myths, accusations, and knee-jerk reactions. I kind of said this before when I was talking about the Othello effect, but now I'm talking to parents and teachers and saying, if I had a nickel for every time I heard dancers, even very young ones, share thoughts and opinions with each other that are clearly acquired or adapted from an adult in their life. I've overheard conversations in lobbies over lunch where I'm like, there's no way this is not being fed from somewhere else, because you just wouldn't come up with this on your own. I'm not saying kids are dumb. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying when you know, right? We have all, I think, encountered something like this. We're like, where did you hear that? And this goes both ways. This can be good and bad. So that old adage, like they're watching you, they're copying you. They hear what you're saying. They're repeating it when you're not around. Correct. Not just for parents, for dance teachers too. It's hard to be under a microscope all the time. That's a difficult thing about being a teacher, is that you're like this demonstration of how to do, how to live, how to be. And you're like, well, I'm just a person too. But then it goes back to what I said. Let them see you be human. For teachers, I have another one for teachers, kind of more specifically, is don't give half a dance story. What does that mean? What do I mean by that? Don't give half a dance story. What I'm referring to is like only explaining what was wrong with the teams that beat you and not explaining why they might have scored higher. That's half a dance story. So if I come into, it's at post-competition and now it's Tuesday rehearsals and we competed this past weekend, and I I can't believe this team beat us, and the girls are all buzzing about it, and then I kind of join in and I go, I know, right? They did this wrong, and I thought their turn sequence was off, and I thought that they didn't even have very good unison, and like, what was up with their costume? And I'm only giving negative critique about a team that beat us without even, I don't have to know why they beat us to be able to, as a professional in the dance world, look at that performance and try to postulate some reasons why they would. And this, and many other ways, but this is a way that you can engage in informed, intelligent conversation with dancers. Help them build a better critical eye for dance. So for those of you who have taken, dance in a college setting, I think it's pretty universal that you have to watch dance performances and then write papers on them, right? Critique papers, you have to analyze the performance, stuff like that. Building that critical eye as you are a teacher or a competition coach, things like that, you have to watch something, analyze it, and then pull the good and the bad out. It is a good dance skill for you to train that into your dancers as well. They shouldn't get it later. They should get it as soon as possible given their maturity level, right? But I think even at the very youngest of ages, if you're old enough to be in a dance class, there are ways that you can sneak it in there that's appropriate for their age and maturity level. But, there have been past times I'm doing like summer series and stuff like that where I'll literally pull up dances on stage of people we don't even know, right? The gift of YouTube. Pull them up on the big screen TV, and then we write down, give me 5 and 5. Give me 5 things that you saw that could have gone better in this dance and 5 things that could have gone worse. And I'm not saying I pick out ones where it's obvious. Sometimes I will pull out incredible dances from studios that I love with choreographers that I'm like living for. And I'm still, can we develop a critical eye here? So don't give half a dance story. Train them to think beyond that. More than the superficial. I have one more thing to talk about today, and that is for teachers and parents to remind their dancers that everybody sitting out there is hoping for a win. If they're sitting on the stage for the awards ceremony, or they're all on the gym floor, or whatever the situation is, and they're sitting there waiting, they close their eyes and squeeze them really hard, they have their fingers crossed, they're all holding hands in a circle. Everybody is sitting there hoping with their little hearts out that their name gets called, that they get called for the highest award, that they get put in the overalls, that they get that double platinum or, triple platinum or whatever it's going to be. Everybody's hoping for that. So, there are days when you might be winning and there are other dancers all around you that are disappointed. And some days that coin is flipped. And they're the ones that get to stand up there and hold like the little plaque or whatever. And it just wasn't your day for that. So remind them everybody is out there trying to get that win. And somebody else's, this is a common phrase, somebody else's success doesn't take away from your accomplishment. And I know that's kind of seems slightly odd to say in the fact that we're talking about like a competition where people are literally getting ranked. So the accomplishment could be looked at as the winning, right? But again, a better life skill is that watching someone next to me succeed does not take away from my accomplishment. It does not take away from my successes. It just means that I'm not getting that extra over-the-top recognition today. You're not going to get it every single day. Not in dance and not in the rest of your life. Okay, so be supportive of the people around you that are having their moment. You want them to be supportive of you when you're having your moment. Encourage them to think about what's happened calmly, to give yourself credit where it's due because you deserve credit, and then to move on. I know, again, easier said than done. I know. And that wraps up everything I wanted to say today about reacting to competition results. Again, it's competition season for traditional studios and all-star studios. So there are quite a few requested topics related to that coming in right now. So the next episode is going to be a rapid fire Q&A. So I will be gathering up some of the questions that have come in already and anything else you guys send in the next few days between this podcast coming out and when I have to record the next one, and giving all kinds of short answers all in one episode. So of course, some of these will deserve more time and attention, elaboration, detailed explanations, but that's going to have to wait. The goal is to answer each one in a minute or two and move on. Wish me luck, but that's the goal. So be sure to send anything that you would like answered regarding dance competitions, and I will fit in as many as I can in this particular rapid fire Q&A round. So I'm going to call it rapid fire Q&A, but it probably won't be that rapid, but I'll try. As always, DM your questions and topic suggestions to us on Instagram at The Movement Mentor or at Dance Teacher Diaries, and on Facebook at The Movement Mentor Official. You can always contact us through our website at themovementmentor.com and let us know if you would like your questions to remain anonymous. Thank you for listening and subscribing to this podcast. Remember, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you.